Greetings ladies and gents, and welcome to this video for Fork This Life, written by Jinxes2011. This video contains chapter 28, and as always I hope that you enjoy, and if you do, please consider subscribing. Chapter 28, A Lone Harpoon in an Empty Battlefield. Gerald POV. As we travel through the old mansion, I prompt Ferdinand to go and chat with Lily on a few occasions. Eventually, he becomes fairly comfortable initiating and keeping a casual conversation, which is nice. In regards to Lily herself, she seems to be friendly enough with him, but nothing on the level that one might consider romantic interaction. Well, these things take time, probably. Putting aside Ferdinand's love life, every time we go into a new city, it's another wave of cheers and celebrations. Ugh, another one of these times I'm glad to be a fork. Celebrations and parties. Count me out. Thank you very much. Way too much noise, too many people, and there's always someone who does something so stupid that you're embarrassed to be in the same species. Although, I'm not anymore. Ferdinand isn't getting much of the attention behind all the paladins in their fancy armor and the priests of their robes, but he is somewhat overwhelmed each time with just that, shrinking down into the saddle and staring straight forwards. He said to me a few days ago, "You were right, this level of praise is just, scary. Staying unknown sounds good to me now. Have you learned how to make other people invisible yet?" Ah, that guy. I'm not a genius, you know. I just have a bit of creativity and diligence, nothing too special. On the topic of praise, mostly the holy folk seem to be humble. I must say, though, that Luck has a bit of a weird streak in this area. Apparently he loves to boast. About other people? I've seen him at a pub once or twice, and all he'll do is talk about what happened. Except he downplays everything he did and exaggerates what everyone else did. So yeah, that's a thing. After about a week of travelling, I see the grass give way to the bare earth and a familiarly dilapidated mansion. Sliding into vision, the doppelganger sits inside, eating dinner. He's in there. I contact Lily directly. She nods slightly. "Hello again, this time I brought friends." I sit at my desk, eyes panning across the room without looking for anything in particular. They eventually settle on a painting, and I stare at it for a while without actually seeing anything. Am I better or worse off as I am now compared to before? I cannot tell. I am probably going to die. Even I can tell that much. I am not that stupid. But at least I go to experience life at the top for a little while. I look around again, taking in the lavish furniture, decadent ornaments, and outrageously expensive artwork. Back home it was a living nightmare. They all scorned me, ridiculed me, hurled insults and abuse. Life was torturous and getting through every day. Just when I thought of taking that final step, I found myself here. This place, this world, I cannot understand it. Demons and gods, monsters and magic levels and stats. Why is it so different? Well, at least it told me about my psychic powers. They were wrong. They were all wrong, and right as well, I suppose. Which is better, here or there? Slow torture or a brief paradise? This feels better, but then, knowing that I'll be gone soon enough is a kind of torture in and of itself. I hear a knocking at the door, and I turn to look. "Who is it?" I call out. "It's me, your highness," the voice replies. I sigh and I move to unlock the door. It's him. Demon, they call him. I turn the handle and pull it open. There he is, smiling ingratiatingly. When I first met him, some 8 months ago, I liked that smile. "Your Highness," he bows deeply. "Everything is going as you planned. Within weeks the Empire will be under your sole control." For the first few months I actually believed this facade, this cunning act was authentic. Others were quick to tell me of the treacherous, evil ways of demons, but I was loath to condemn anyone merely by their race. "Yes, only a matter of time," I say calmly. "Did you come here only to sing my praises, or is this something that requires my attention?" He fed me lies and fueled my ambitions, whispering plans into my ears. It was only when he applauded my intelligence that I caught on. I had heard similar words uttered enough times that I recognized the sarcasm in his words, regardless of how deeply he hid it. His expression doesn't shift in the slightest as he slightly bows his head and says, "I hear Count Brooke was very vocal about his displeasure in your appointment at the ball yesterday." I sound sincerely angry at this, but like everything else he does, I can tell that it's fake. I school my expression into a mask of anger. Oh, then he could be disposed of like the rest. I've been acting my whole life out of necessity rather than choice. If he wants to deceive me, then in turn I shall deceive him without mercy. He may have already manipulated me into digging my own grave, but I'll not let him do as he pleases. Unfortunately, I can't tell him to kill himself. My power does not allow it, nor can I tell him to do something that he is aware would result in his death, such as sending him into the church. I recently discovered that most of all the native religions hate demons. Without knowing exactly what he's planning, all I can do is work in secret against him and limit his movements as much as I can. We smile at each other, two liars, each secretly out to kill the other. Ferdinand POV. You again, the doppelganger says darkly, carefully eyeing the group. His gaze settles on Lily and Luck, and his eyes narrow. Paladins of Vitus, huh? My favorite type of people to kill. Oh, and why is that? Lily asks, a hint of frost in her voice. The doppelganger frowns. Because you bastards don't seem to get it. We monsters don't want to be your friends. He finishes through gritted teeth. Luck's eyes narrow as he starts moving forward to attack the doppelganger, but Lily stops him. Not yet. What better way to learn about monsters than from their own mouth? She says to him, before turning back to the doppelganger. Why wouldn't you want to be friends? Everyone needs friends. Ha! The doppelganger barks. Don't compare us with yourselves. Monsters don't have friends. We don't want friends. There is only the weak and the strong. Don't delude yourself into thinking that you are friends with a monster. They do not love you. They fear you, he spits. Lily shakes her head. It's a shame you think so. Call of the Wild. The last words she intones, a burst of holy magic radiates outwards. To my surprise, the doppelganger just watches and smiles as it travels towards him. When it reaches him, his smile only spreads as it bounces harmlessly off. I see you don't recognize the spell, Lily says, raising her sword and her shield. Oh no, the doppelganger denies, grinning as he twirls his spear once in his hand. I do. For a moment, neither of them move. The rest of us look at each other, unsure if we should be waiting or attacking. Then I feel a low rumbling in the ground below me. I look around in confusion. The doppelganger's smile is only growing, and Lily is only smiling slightly, although she is now also wary of whatever the doppelganger seems to have up his sleeve. Soon I can hear as well as feel the rumbling, and I finally catch sight of the dust cloud off to the east, seemingly growing in size, or coming towards us. Stampede? Gerald says in panic. Is this supposed to happen? I told you. They fear you, but they fear me more, the doppelganger says, exploding red mist getting intent. The cloud of dust splits down the middle, and each half veering off to either side to avoid the doppelganger, but still towards us. At this point, they're finally close enough for me to see what they are. A herd of bronze-horned bulls, the characteristic horns glinting in the light as they charge. I break out in a sweat. That's not supposed to happen, I ask fearfully. Lily looks ahead with a frown. No. The red mist suddenly caves inwards, revealing a familiar red-armored figure wielding a blood spear. He's put on the armor, I warned Gerald, since he can't see it. Time for killing, says the doppelganger, and darts forward, engaging him in a melee as Lily again glows with holy magic. again sending out a burst of energy which causes the stampede to veer off even further and away from the battle. The doppelganger unleashes a burst of what I recognize as ki, knocking Luck's shield arm to one side. At the same time, he sweeps his spear towards Luck. Luck is able to jump backwards just in time, but isn't able to completely escape the damage. As Meaty resumes, I spot a small rent in his armor and a touch of red through it. Not a moment later, a beer of light shines upon Luck, and his movements get slightly faster. The doppelganger's head whips towards the priests, and he sends a burst of ki towards Luck. It doesn't damage him, but it knocks him back far enough that the doppelganger is able to disengage and sprint towards the priest. I cry out in shock and start to step towards them, but before I can even make it halfway there, the doppelganger is thrusting his spear towards them, and a glowing barrier stops it. "Your spear will not reach them while I'm still alive," states Marco, a steely glint at his eyes. "Yes, this way is closed to you." The doppelganger curses and swipes again at the shield without success before turning around to block Luck's strike. Carefully approaching with the shields raised, the other paladins, Aiden and Ressa, I think are their names, move to box in the doppelganger. Surely I should be doing something, but there's not really any space around him. I think that I'm just going to get in the way. Wait, I have a battle cry skill. I try to activate it, but I can't somehow feel it won't work. Why? Then it hits me. I have to have a fighting spirit of over 30. What am I at now? 3? Come on! Didn't you want to avenge Richard's death? Fight! Fighting spirit plus 5. That's not enough. Come on! Fight! Fighting spirit plus 15. More! This isn't all that I can do. Fighting spirit plus 10. Battle cry! Ah! I shout, and the doppelganger doesn't even flinch. Right. Of course it won't work. He's too strong for me to affect him. Crestfallen, I watched as the paladin slowly box in the doppelganger, with Luck, Aiden and Risa attacking. He isn't able to defend himself. Unfortunately, Aiden and Risa attacks aren't powerful enough to pierce his armor, so the doppelganger is able to focus solely on defending against Luck's attacks. However, the attacks are still making it more difficult for him to move, and Luck thrusts a piercing hole after hole into the doppelganger's armor. But then there doesn't have any holes. I rub my eyes. Oh, the armor's repairing itself as it gets damaged. I hope that the wounds below the armor aren't getting healed. I can't see how that would be. Yelling out in anger, the doppelganger releases a burst of ki, sending a fair amount of dirt flying as well as pushing back all 3 paladins, sending ripples across the surface of the barrier. Taking that opportunity, the doppelganger escapes the encirclement and charges straight at me. I take 2 steps back and ready my sword, but before the doppelganger can reach close to me, he intercepted by Lily. I hear an odd screeching sound as his spear slashes across her shield, but she stops his advance. The doppelganger sends a series of quick thrusts at Lily with such speed that it looks to me like there are multiple spears. Lily defends against them, but is forced to take a successive steps back as she does so. Then Luck rejoins the fight, and Aiden and Risa not far behind. The doppelganger looks even more pressured than before. Every wound he makes to inflict is healed within moments by the priests, while his own just keep accumulating underneath the armor. Soon I see actual blood seeping out of the armor, splattering onto the ground with every movement that he makes. He tries to ki blast again, but even less success than last time. As the battle goes on, the doppelganger's movement gets slower and less varied, while the paladins keep attacking with the same ardor as they had at the beginning. Finally, the doppelganger collapses to the ground, his armor melting off of his body. Not willing to take any chances, Luck plunges his sword into the doppelganger's body. The doppelganger's face and body returns to its original appearance. Its skin changes to a waxy white, the nose flattens to little more than a thin pair of holes, and its whole body shrinks in height. Doppelgangers look unnatural. Lily, point of view. A bit to your left, a tad forwards. There, Gerald says in my mind. guiding me to the location with the buried diary. Scooping out the dirt with my hands, it only takes a few handfuls of earth before I feel my fingers scrape against something harder. I dig around it, and within half a minute I have the box out and open. I take off my gauntlets, wiping the dirt from them with the cloth, then temporarily tucking them under my arm as I look at the book. Activating my magic detection skill as far as I can tell. There isn't any magic in or around it, so I deactivate my detection skill and take out the book, flipping it open to the first page. I briefly skim through the first page. It looks like it contains information we need, so I tell the others to search the mansion while I sit down and read through it. As I leaf through the page after page, the situation becomes clearer, and my eyebrows become more furrowed. It answers several lingering questions that I had had. The peculiar behavior of the skeletons in the fields, for example, was because the then necromancer had been ordered to take skeletons to work in the fields. Obviously, the necromancer knew full well that it was impossible for the dead to cultivate anything living, so he did the absolute minimum he could while still obeying orders. One skeleton per field, repeatedly striking the ground with hoes. Apparently, the one controlling them knows nothing about the undead aside from their ceaseless stamina, and had hoped to replace farmers with undead, a venture doomed to fail with its conception. As for their controller himself, his current identity is the Crown Prince of the Empire. The diary states that he did this through his use of psychic powers, controlling some of the highest powers in the Empire, including the Emperor himself. In other words, the Empire is effectively under the control of this man, who is undoubtedly being influenced by the demon under his control. It's in their nature. Unfortunately, the diary does not elucidate the origin of said prince, nor the demons. According to the diary, although they are all effectively the prince's slaves, they operate separately and have minimal contact with each other. Or perhaps had is the better word. I steadily read through the whole thing. There is a little information that seems useful to us currently, apart from his appearance and the current location. Snapping the book shut, I stow it away and announce our destination, the Empire's capital city. Where was that again? Ferdinand POV. Earlier. I glanced through yet another empty room, half wondering if the doppelganger stayed in all the rooms are like this. Hey, the others have found everything of worth, Gerald said, oddly taciturn. Okay, I start to head to the front again. There's something you'll probably want to see, says Gerald, proceeding to direct me away from the group to the east. Where are we going? I ask as he ignores me. I soon notice that something is sticking out of the ground in the direction that I'm walking. What's that? You know as well as I do, Gerald says gravely. And I do. I walk up to it and I reach out, and suddenly everything seems so real. This is where it started, and now it's ended. I sit down in front of the lone harpoon in the empty battlefield. It's stained with blood and soot, but it still stands. It's over, Richard, I say. The one who killed you is dead. I let out a deep breath and I smile wryly. I just wish I could have done it myself. Does it really matter? Gerald asked quietly. Dead is dead. If all this didn't happen, who knows when we might have been strong enough to beat him? And by then, who knows where he might have been? Maybe you're right. I feel a tear slide down my nose and drip down to the ground as I reminisce. You shouldn't mourn, kid. I turned my head. Joe, I say in surprise. What? He says, smiling sympathetically. I said I'd offer a few wise words every now and again. I think this is a good time. I look back at the harpoon. Can you do that later? Yep, he says, sitting down next to me, but I'm not gonna. I sigh in resignation. As I was saying, you shouldn't mourn. If there's one thing that all life has in common, it's death. From the day someone is born, you can say with absolute certainty that it's going to die someday. He shrugs. Nobody needs a crystal ball to predict that. What does that have to do with anything? I say bitterly. Of course everyone's going to die someday. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't mourn. If everything's going to die, it is only really a question of when. Death isn't fair, as one of my friends likes to remind me. You never quite know when it's the end. He scratches his neck. In effect, the only difference between people is what they do while they're alive. He turns his head to look at me. Don't mourn his death. Celebrate his life. Joe spreads his arms wide. Remember who he was, not who he could have been. He was a man amongst men, a sailor and a warrior worthy of song, a beloved husband and father, the friendly neighborhood fisherman, and he went out fighting the man who killed his son. He smiles warmly. That's a life worth celebrating, don't you think? I slowly nod, my lips stretching into a smile, albeit a sad one. Wait, the doppelganger killed his son? I ask, finally noticing what he said. Yeah, of course, Joe says. Doppelgangers need to kill the person whose appearance they copy to retain it permanently. I nod in understanding, looking into the distance. I wonder if he knew. He had his suspicions, no doubt, but enough of that, Joe says, pulling out a ceramic bottle from nowhere and popping the cork. He swiftly pulls out a pair of cups and starts pouring a sweet-smelling liquid into them. It's just fruit juice, he confesses, left with all my wine back home, but we can pretend. He hands me a cup and raises his own. To Richard. To Richard, I raise my own glass, clinking it against his. I take a deep drink. It's good. I think I'm getting a bit drunk already. Drunk on sadness. Hey, it's all right. We all get a bit sad when we realize that we'll never see a friend again. You get to my age, you start counting how many friends you have left, rather than how many have passed away. I see a thin film of moisture in his eyes as he looks over to the horizon. For a while, we just sit there and drink in silence. Finally, I stand up. I'd like to make a gravestone for him. A large, smooth rock breaks through the dirt a few meters away and floats over, thumping into the ground in front of me. Here, Gerald says. Let me do a little something too, says Joe, grabbing a harpoon and pressing it into the stone, causing it to sink slowly into the rock. When he lets go, I find to my confusion that the stone has somehow fused with the haft of the harpoon. It doesn't budge even in the slightest when I touch it. It dawns on me that I don't have any tools to carve words into the stone. I turn awkwardly to Joe. I don't suppose you have a chisel or something? Use me, says Gerald. Oh, right. I fetch him out, and he changes into a thin rod with one end tapering to a point. With him absorbing a little bits of stone at a time, I etch some words into the stone. Then we leave, leaving behind only a harpoon pointing into the sky. Richard, husband, father, sailor, fighter, fisherman, and friend, may his soul find peace as it drifts away. End of chapter. And that, my friends, is the end of the video. I hope that you enjoyed. If you did, please consider supporting the author from the links down below. And if you'd like to support this channel, there are numerous ways listed down below. The easiest of which would be to share this channel, subscribe, like, and comment, and all the other stuff that Google wants us to push. But anyways, until the next video, I hope that you all have a good one, and I'll see you then. Cheers.